वॉल्यूम ऑन। चेक कर लें, आपको थोड़ी देर में वहाँ पे ऑडियो।
Nuruddin Sahab, how are you? Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Doing good, alhamdulillah.
What are you doing these days?
Finishing last course for my undergraduate.
these issues limited for all.
So many groups.
Audio test 1 2 3. You can start now.
It's good to go?
Yes.
Greetings and welcome to tonight's event. My name is Nuruddin Bashir. I will be your host for this evening's program. On behalf of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, I would like to thank all of our viewers for joining us this evening. Tonight's symposium, Justice in an Unjust World, is being organized with the following objectives in mind: to address recent events that have taken place around the globe, to give a glimpse into the concept of and solutions to injustice from an Islamic perspective, and lastly, to provide a platform for discussion on the given topic. To accomplish this, tonight's program is organized as follows. First, as is customary in Islam, the program will begin with a recitation from the Holy Quran. The verses selected deal directly with the subject at hand, and therefore I urge all of the viewers to listen closely. After recitation of the Holy Quran, we will have a keynote address, followed by a question and answer period. The audience can send questions via text message to 416-890-6529. Again, that's 416-890-6529, or via Twitter by tweeting at AMJ Brampton East. Again, that is at AMJ Brampton East. Before I officially kick off tonight's program, I'd like to take a minute for the benefit of those in the audience who may not be familiar with the Ahmadiyya Muslim community to give a brief introduction. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is a dynamic, fast-growing community within Islam, founded in 1889 by Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, peace be upon him, of Qadian, India, who claimed to be the Messiah of this age. The community spans over 200 countries with a membership in the tens of millions around the globe. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is a leading Muslim community who categorically rejects terrorism in every shape and form. It advocates for universal human rights and protection of all minorities without discrimination of creed, color, or ethnicity. It champions the empowerment and education of women. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community is the foremost Islamic organization with a central spiritual leadership known as a Khalifa or Caliph. The community believes that only spiritual leadership in the form of Caliphate can uphold the true values of Islam and unite all humanity. The Ahmadiyya Muslim community, in fact, has been led by a Caliphate since the demise of its founder. Presently, the community is being led by the fifth successor or Khalifa of Islam, Hazrat Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. Without further delay, I would like to start tonight's program by inviting Sajid Amir Musloon to recite verses from the Quran and to present the English and French translations. Sajid?
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Peace be on you all. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين بالقسط شهداء لله ولو على أنفسكم أو الوالدين والأقربين إن يكن غنيا أو فقيرا فالله أولى بهما فلا تتبعوا الهوى أن تعدلوا وإن تلووا أو تعرضوا فإن الله كان بما تعملون خبيرا يا أيها الذين آمنوا كونوا قوامين لله شهداء بالقسط ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى واتقوا الله إن الله خبير بما تعملون. I will now present the English translation of the verses just recited. I seek refuge with Allah against Satan the accursed. In the name of Allah, the gracious, ever merciful. O ye who believe, be strict in observing justice and be witnesses for Allah, even though it be against yourselves or against parents and kindred. Whether he be rich or poor, Allah is more regardful of them both than you are. Therefore, follow not low desires, so that you may be able to act equitably. And if you conceal the truth or evade it, then remember that Allah is well aware of what you do. O ye who believe, be steadfast in the cause of Allah, bearing witness in equity, and let not a people's enmity incite you to act otherwise than with justice. Be always just, that is nearer to righteousness. And fear Allah, surely Allah is aware of what you do. Je vais maintenant présenter la traduction française des versets qui viennent tout juste d'être récités. Je cherche refuge auprès d'Allah contre Satan, le maudit. Au nom d'Allah, le gracieux, le miséricordieux. Ô vous qui croyez, soyez fermes dans l'application de la justice et soyez les témoins d'Allah, quand bien même ce serait contre vous-même ou contre vos parents ou vos proches parents. Que ce soit un riche ou un pauvre, Allah est plus attentif à eux que vous ne l'êtes. Ne suivez donc pas de vils désirs pour que vous puissiez agir équitablement. Et si vous êtes ambigu dans votre témoignage ou vous s'y l'éludez, souvenez-vous qu'Allah est très conscient de ce que vous faites. Ô vous qui croyez, soyez fermes dans la cause d'Allah en portant témoignage avec justice. Et ne laissez pas l'hostilité d'un peuple vous inciter à agir autrement qu'avec justice. Soyez toujours équitables, car l'équité est plus près de la piété. Et craignez Allah. Assurément, Allah est très conscient de ce que vous faites. Jazakallah ahsan al-jaza.
Thank you, Sajid, for sharing that beautiful recitation with us. In these two verses, the Quran has clearly laid down the path to justice. One, it tells us to be a witness in the cause of justice, even if it's against ourselves or our loved ones. And two, despite your or anyone's enmity, you must always act with justice. Now we'll proceed to the keynote address, and we'll hear more about the Islamic perspective on justice. For tonight's keynote address, we have with us missionary Imtiaz Ahmed. He will further address this topic based on the Islamic principle. Imtiaz Ahmed is a missionary of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community. He is also an engaging speaker, writer, and author. He has completed a 7-year degree in Islamic theology and comparative religion in Canada in 2010. He has served in Ghana, and is currently the Imam of Bayatul Islam Mosque in Vaughan. Missionary Imtiaz keeps a full schedule, working to bridge relations in the community at regular interfaith events and through commentaries to the media. While serving in Ottawa, he was noted as one of the top 3 youth to watch in 2015 by the Ottawa Metro News. The Power and Influence magazine also named him as one of the 25 most influential young Canadians. Most of all, Missionary Imtiaz lives by the motto of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, which is love for all, hatred for none. At this time, I'd like to request Missionary Imtiaz Ahmed to please address us.
Jazakumullahu ta'ala. Thank you so much. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. In the name of Allah, the gracious, the merciful. Despite mankind's 21st century claims that we have evolved beyond the need for religion, our world is plagued by double standards and hypocrisy at every level of our society. And the resulting injustice is of grave concern and grief for those of us who sincerely feel the pain for humanity. The concept of justice covers multiple facets of human life, starting with our families, to our cities, to our provinces, to our nations, and ultimately the world we live in. The hairline fractures in the skeleton of justice are not always visible. But just like anyone watching this event, whoever had a hairline fracture will tell you that they are incredibly detrimental to the overall structural integrity of the bone and agonizing beyond words. In life, we cannot stand when someone steps on our toes. If a person budges in front of us in line, we suddenly become so self-righteous about seeing injustice done that we will openly humiliate them. Yet justice demands that our indignation for upholding justice should also become inflamed when we see the rights of others being usurped. It is the responsibility of each and every human being to uphold a high standard of justice, irrespective of the situation that they may be in, whether the outcomes favors them or not. In life, we are sometimes faced with a situation where we have to choose between justice and our own self-respect, or covering for one of our friends or loved ones. It is in moments like these that a person demonstrates that whether he is a friend of justice or not. In the beginning, there was a recitation of the Holy Quran. The verse which was recited in the beginning from chapter 4, verse 136. O ye who believe, be strict in observing justice, and be witness for the sake of Allah, even though it be against yourselves or against parents and kindred. Whether he be rich or poor, Allah is more regardful of them both than you are. Therefore, follow not your low desires, that you may be able to act equitably. And if you conceal the truth or evade it, then remember, Allah is well aware of what you do. In this verse, Muslims have been directed to be ready to give testimony against themselves or their family members in order to establish truth and for justice to be served. A Muslim's loyalty to the truth must take precedence over everything else. God Almighty says in the Holy Quran, chapter 16, verse 91, verily Allah enjoins justice and the doing of good to others and giving like kindred. This is a shining principle of how to discharge the rights of one another. The Arabic word that has been used in this particular verse of the Holy Quran adl, which means absolute justice. The question is, what does absolute justice entail? The Holy Quran states, O ye who believe, be steadfast in the cause of Allah, bearing witness in equity, and let not a people's enmity incite you to act otherwise than with justice. Be always just, that is nearer to righteousness, and fear Allah. Surely Allah is well aware of what you do. Chapter 5, verse 9. Thus the Holy Quran commands Muslims to be fair and just with all parties, including their enemies and opponents. This is the highest standard of justice, that neither on an individual level, or individual basis, nor on communal basis should the enmity of others prevent you from acting with justice. Is this not a beautiful principle to demolish the walls of hatred? But Islam does not just stop there, does not just stop with justice. It seeks to take man to a far loftier state. The Holy Quran says that if you wish to promote love, if you wish to promote peace, and if you wish to promote affection, and if you wish to remove enmity from the world, then one must go beyond justice and enact true and loving kindness. There is a sweetness in an act of kindness that is felt by the soul. Justice only helps to balance out what has fallen out of balance. For instance, if my neighbors trespass my rights, I can drag them to court and have justice done. However, this will not foster a positive and long-standing relationship between us. If I instead make it a point to inform my neighbors courteously and bring them a small gift, it will not only resolve the issue, but also will bring love and tenderness between us. However, the comprehensive and ingenious teachings of the Holy Quran do not just stop there. God Almighty also explains that when I exercise kindness, I should not consider that I have done some great favor upon my neighbor, but should consider it part and parcel of being human. I should never bring it up, any act of kindness, in the future to gloat about it or to make them feel bad that they owe me anything. Hence, Islam instructs us to decorate the fundament of justice with a crown of kindness as well. The best illustration of this verse and this teaching would be the way parents forgive their children, because parents do not remind them of their past favors, neither do they expect anything in return from their children. I'd like to present one historic and shining example from the early history of Islam. It was during the caliphate of Ali radiallahu anhu, may God be pleased with him, the fourth caliph of Islam, when Muslim empire was one of the most powerful in the world. And the reason was they upheld justice. They made sure that justice was served at every level. One example in the caliphate of Ali, may God be pleased with him, once the caliph lost his armor. And few months later, he saw his armor in the possession of a Jewish man. And Ali approached the man and asked for its return. And the Jewish man refused and instead demanded that this is an accusation and the matter should be settled in the court. Ali agreed to it. This was a demand, he agreed to it. So they went to the court. Ali initiated the conversation. He said, I lost my armor and I found it in this man's possession. The judge asked the Jewish man, have you anything to say? He replied, this is my armor and I own it. The judge demanded the caliph to produce two witnesses to substantiate his claim. Ali produced his worker as his first witness who testified in his favor. The Caliph then brought his sons as his second witnesses to testify for him. So the Muslim judge said, I accept the testimony of your employee. However, I still need another witness, as the testimony of your sons is not acceptable because a son cannot testify in the favor of his father. Ali, may God be pleased with him, was unable to provide another witness. So the judge settled the dispute in the favor of the Jewish man and handed the armor over to him. The Jewish man was astounded by this decision, and he said, the Caliph of Islam brought me to the court of his own appointed judge, and the judge gave a verdict against the Caliph, the most powerful person in the empire. And the Caliph accepted the verdict gracefully without any resistance. The Jewish man then glanced towards Ali and continued that your claim is true, and this armor definitely belongs to you, and you had lost it the other day and I found it. Therefore, it is your property. Please accept it. Ali, may God be pleased with him, replied, I give you not only my armor, but also my horse as a gift. That is not only justice, but also kindness. This is the level of justice that Islam calls for, the transparency that it teaches, the blind accountability that it propounds. During his life, the founder of Islam, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, may the peace and blessing of God be upon him, laid down in just a few words the foundations for peace in the world and between all peoples. The Prophet of Islam, peace and blessing of God be upon him, said that when a person should desire for others whatever he desires for himself. And I believe that this timeless principle is as true and as valid today as it ever was in the past. Certainly, every person desires peace for themselves and to be saved from all anxieties and worries. Every person hopes that he or she has the means to live comfortably and without any hardship. Every person seeks good health so that they can enjoy their lives free from pain or difficulty. Every person craves good standing in their community and respect of others. So in a similar vein, every government and every nation also seeks such prosperity. However, how many people, how many nations are there who truly desire peace, prosperity, and success for others? That's a question we need to ask ourselves at every level. In terms of verbal proclamations, it is easy, very easy indeed, to say that we desire the best for others. However, in practice, it is much more difficult and challenging. Wherever there is a conflict of interests, most people tend to prioritize their own interests and welfare over and beyond the rights of others. This is true at an individual level and true at a collective level, at national level. Today, sadly speaking, rather than selflessness, we sadly see selfishness. Most people or nation prioritize their own rights and are quite willing to relegate and demean the rights of others in order to fulfill their own goals and ambitions. In order to establish a just and peaceful society, Islam also places great emphasis on the fulfillment of one's trust. Thus, in chapter 4, verse 59 of the Holy Quran states, "Verily Allah commands you to make over the trust to those entitled to them, and that when you judge between people, you judge with justice. And surely excellent is that which is with which Allah admonishes you. Allah is all hearing and all seeing. In this verse, Muslims have been instructed to fulfill the trusts that have been placed in them. This includes trusts and oaths that have been undertaken at a personal level, and those trusts that are collective. The oath of marriage, the oath of friendship, the oath of treating God's creatures with love, the oaths that we make with our Creator. In terms of collective trust, one important aspect of is the duty of citizens to elect the representatives of the state who they consider to be the greatest value to their nation. When it comes to elections or nominations, a person should not vote automatically for his ally or party member. Rather, they should consider who is the most qualified and suitable for this task at hand. Thereafter, those who are elected and handed the keys to government or power should exercise their duties with honesty, integrity, and justice. This teaching is the model of democracy in Islam that Islam champions. In every society, there are mutual trusts and obligations placed upon all people. And for the society to function successfully, it is necessary for ordinary citizens and leaders to fulfill their responsibilities towards each other with true justice. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the understanding that has been taught to us in this day and age by the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, the promised Messiah and reformer of the latter days. The worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the Caliph of Islam, may God be his helper, states, if we truly want peace in our time, then we must act with justice. We must value equality and fairness. Whether Muslim or non-Muslim, we should pursue the universal standards of justice outlined in the Holy Quran. As the Prophet of Islam, peace and blessing of God be upon him, so beautifully stated, we must love for others what we love for ourselves. We must pursue the rights of others in the same zeal and determination that we pursue our own rights. We should broaden our horizons and look at what is right for the world rather than what is only right for us. These are the true means for peace in our age. End of quote. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Missionary Imtiaz, for that very informative and enlightening talk. I hope that it's inspired a lot of questions and it will create a lot of good conversation in the question and answer period. Before we get to that, I believe there's a small video clip that we want to play. I request the technical team to go ahead and play the clip.
How can we actually eliminate these issues once and for all?
So many groups have come forward to protest, which before were sitting on the sidelines or just observing the drama play out and with dispassionate and disinterest, but now suddenly, because of the nature of this particular crime against humanity, George Floyd's killing, and it being recorded for 8 minutes and 46 long seconds, you can hear every aspect of a human life being snuffed out. They couldn't step back. But I've always thought that when God sends Moses to Egypt, he doesn't say, go grab the Israelis and start rioting in the streets or voting or rebelling or protesting or any kind of movement of that nature. He says, go straight to Pharaoh and address Pharaoh and try to get him through using cogent arguments, using reasons and signs. So here Moses approaches the Pharaoh with the issues and tries to change this system from the top level that trickles down and affects the people at the lowest level. The movements come and go. The issues remain. And the ones who can change the issues are those who have the power. So what Azul is talking about is solving the issue by using voting power, going to those who are in power and saying, number one, give us the right to vote. Don't disenfranchise us. Don't use all the laws of a certain county or a state or a nation to prevent a certain population from exercising this vote, which will allow them to bring into power leaders who will fulfill their trust and fulfill their rights.
Thank you for that video. This brings us to the question and answer period. I welcome all in attendance to send any questions about today's topic. Again, you can text it to 416-890-6529, or you can send it via Twitter at AMJ Brampton East. So Missionary Imtiaz, we're now entering the question and answer period. As we wait for questions to come in, I think I'll start with a question of my own. As we all know, the big event right now, is George Floyd in the United States, who was, essentially murdered in the streets. So this injustice that took place, it's brought people out into the streets in mass, protesting across the country. From an Islamic perspective, what is the stance on protest? Can it bring about change? And should Muslims, or particularly in this case, do Ahmadiyya Muslims get involved in protest?
This is a very relevant question, in my opinion. And we have seen the protests and riots that not just happened in the United States. We've seen it happening right here at home in Canada and all over the world. And you mentioned it was a murder. Indeed, it was a murder. But the sad part of this is that this murder was done by the people who are supposed to protect the lives of people. So I understand the frustration of the people, but this is not how change occur. If you want change at a bigger level, then you have to start at the grassroots level and work your way all the way up. So when it comes to riots and protests, Islam does not encourage this. Everyone is free to do whatever he or she wants. But Islam says that we should avoid such places of disorder, where it can not only put yourself in harm, but also you can put others at harm, and the property is at harm. The Holy Prophet and the law of the law of the land is also compromised when these riots occur. So the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God be upon him, in one of his narrations, he has taught us a true Muslim is he whose hands or tongue are saved from others, meaning he doesn't harm anyone. We believe in education. We believe in other systematic ways where we can have our message heard in different ways, but this is something is not productive. This is not a in terms of theoretically speaking, this is just not just Islam's teaching, but the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, we Muslims who believe in the Messiah Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, peace be upon him, we actually practice this in letter and spirit, this teaching of Islam. I want to take you back in 2010 when two of our mosques, they were attacked. And in this mosque, the government was also accomplice and law enforcement was also an accomplice. And they let these people massacre innocent Ahmadi Muslims. Now, none of Ahmadi Muslim, not a single Ahmadi Muslim in Pakistan or anywhere else in the world came out on street doing protests. So here we're talking about one life, but at the same time, looking at this incident, more than 90 people gave their lives, but not a single Ahmadi Muslim came out on street to protest it. And this is again to follow the teachings of Islam. We, by the grace of Allah the Exalted, we have a leader. The current head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad, the Caliph of Islam. May God be his helper. He guides us every step of the way.
How can we actually eliminate these issues once?
This is something to, there are a movement should be all innocent lives matter, not just black lives, because there were, atrocities and atrocious crimes have been committed against the native people in the United States. That group is also marginalized. So all innocent lives matter, because at the end of the day, we are all human beings, and we need to stand up for each other. All those people who have been, wronged, who have been, whose rights were taken away, and they have been, persecuted. Even they continue to be persecuted. We support every such group who are innocent, and their lives do matter.
Perfect, thank you. Now I'll go to some of the questions that are coming in. The questions I received is: people commit injustices when they feel the government is unjust. What advice do you have for those who feel this way?
Yeah, this is a very good question. The thing is, one, when the governments commit injustices, then the solution is not to take the law in your hand. That will only make things worse. The solution is, yeah, you go through the democratic ways and means and have your voice heard, and you can only try your level best to do it through the legal means. And if one person goes out and takes action into hands, this world will be chaotic. There will be chaos all over the world. There will be no law and order. So um, everything has a way, especially when atrocious crimes are committed. Then you need to use the democratic ways and means to have your voice heard. That's one thing. The second thing is, um, use your exercise your right of democracy, which is to vote, and talk to people, those who are in authority. And this is the injustice being done, and that needs to be dealt with. So that's another way. The another way is by educating, educating people. Education has immense power. Once we educate and have our message heard, then it is bound to make an impact on our cause. Look what's happening in the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, for example, in the United States. They didn't go out on streets. What they done was they wrote thousands of letters to different mayors, and they involved the politicians. So the voice of African American Ahmadi Muslim, they are heard, and change start to happen. They wrote letters to lawmakers. So by using the legal means, we need to put our case out there. And then also, religiously speaking, spiritually speaking, then we leave our case in the hand of God, and we pray. And this is repeatedly we have been taught that you take your case in the court of God, and then you let Him practice justice, and when he does justice, and then we know what happens.
Perfect. It reminded me as you were speaking of the verses recited in the beginning of the program, where it told the believers to act with justice in spite of people's enmity. So just because somebody has committed injustice against you doesn't mean that you should return with injustice.
Absolutely.
So the next question, missionary Imtiaz, I have is: if we are not in power and not the majority, how can we make a change to influence the world towards justice?
In Chinese, there is a saying that the journey of 1,000 miles start with first step. So we can't just say that we are in minority and this change will never happen. We need to start from somewhere, and that taking that first step is always difficult, but it's important. But by the grace of God, we haven't just taken first step. There are many there actually a lot of work has already been done with regards to this, and a lot of people support the cause of justice. So it's important to know that we can't just look at the task at hand and say, we are in minority, and um, we will never be able to have our voice heard. In the Holy Quran, there is a verse of God Almighty says, how many times in the history it has happened that the small groups were able to overcome the larger groups. So there is a lesson to be learned from history. All of these movements, they starts very small. All of these movements start very small, and then they grow and they expand, and then they envelop everything.
There's some very interesting questions coming in here. Next I have, is your Khalifa only a spiritual Khalifa, or will he become political Khalifa as well? Or does he get involved in politics, I guess is the question.
The Ahmadiyya Muslim community believes in separation of mosque and state. He is our religious and spiritual worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, and he guides us on our religious and spiritual matters. But at the same time, he also guides world leaders to do justice. For example, our worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community has spoken at different parliaments in the world, right here at home in Canada, at the U.S. Congress, European Parliament, British, and you name it. He has traveled all across the world to call people towards equality and justice. So whenever an advice needs to be given when it comes to the rights of fulfilling the rights of human being, he advises politicians, he advises lawmakers what needs to be done so that the rights of minorities, the rights of marginalized groups are not usurped. So his role as a fatherly figure who is there to give advice, especially in terms of religious matter and sometimes in political matters. But having said this, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community believes in separation of mosque and state.
Excellent, thank you. There was another question that came in along the same lines. I'll read it, but there's no need to answer it. Has your Khalifa tried to advise or counsel the world leaders? I think you just touched on that.
Absolutely.
So we can just pass that one for now.
And I'd like to highlight, if there's a book that has been written. In fact, this is a compilation of his speeches in different parts of the world, in different parliaments, where he talks about justice, where he talks about equality, fulfilling the rights of human being and rights of God. So these speeches have been compiled into a book which can be found on alislam.org. If our viewer would like to get a copy of this, you can certainly send us an email or request certainly we will help you with this book, and this will be free of charge.
Perfect, thank you. Again, just to reiterate, that was allislam.org. You can find that book as well as a lot of other literature. Next question that came in is, do you believe in life for a life? Should capital punishment be brought back in Canada?
This is a political matter that I won't get into the detail of this, and has nothing to do with our topic at hand. But you know, it's up to the lawmakers to decide what's best. And like I said, we don't get involved in you know, political matters. So this is, I leave it up to the lawmakers to decide. In my opinion, does not have any weight when it comes to influencing the lawmaker, or for that matter.
Fair enough. And there's another question which, again, I think was already answered earlier. I'll just read it for the benefit of other audience members. It's asked, are Ahmadiyya Muslims involved in protest against police brutalities and in favor of defunding police force? So I think that was addressed already by you, Missionary Imtiaz. So I'll go to the next question. You have mentioned the teachings of Islam about justice. Realistically speaking, is this teaching possible to follow? How do you, I guess what it's asking is, how do you actively implement it?
I think this is a very good question. Actually, equality and justice, they are interconnected, and they are inseparable, in my opinion. The Quranic teaching is that all men and women are created from Adam. So that's the equality, that's a starting point. And it also says that no one has any superiority over anyone except in the basis of righteousness. How good you are in terms of fulfilling rights of your fellow human beings, and rights of God. And in his last sermon, the Prophet of Islam, may the peace and blessing of God be upon him, said in his famous words that an Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, and a non-Arab has no superiority over an Arab. A white man has no superiority over a black man, nor a black man has any superiority over a white man. So this is clear in Islam that equality is the most important thing. So if we want justice, then there must be equality, and there must be equality for justice to be served. So they are interconnected and related to each other. Unfortunately, we see in the south of us, a crime which is committed by an African American will get punished, and a crime which is which is committed by a white American, what happens, either he will get away with it or just minimum punishment for it. So when these injustices happen, you see the result, what happened in the United States. So equality and justice are interconnected, and there must be equality for justice to be served.
Okay, so to play devil's advocate, how then do you establish equality from an Islamic perspective? Because it seems, based on your response, that's what's preventing us from achieving justice, is not having equality. So how do we break these barriers, particularly like in the United States, where you have differences between the different races, so white and black get treated differently based on skin color? How do we address that issue?
Yeah, this is a wonderful question. Islam's teaching is filled with examples, not just theoretically speaking, filled with examples by the Prophet, by his companions. You see, America has a very, very, history that is painful to read, especially when it comes to transatlantic slave trade and how the African Americans were brought here, and how they were enslaved and whatnot, and then they were freed. And what happened was, even when they were freed, there was systematic racism that was continuously happening and still continue to happen. So saying that somebody is free, but not giving them actually the freedom to explore, to grow, to have the same rights, that's a different thing. So that's unfortunately did not happen in the United States. Now, going back to your question, how did Islam overcome this this notion of or inequality in this society, Arabian society prior to Islam? They were no different than what we had in South, a few decades ago. Inequality, slavery, and they used to take pride in this. The more slaves you have, the more status, the bigger status you have. So a lot of things. So the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God be upon him, and his teachings were he not only emancipated slaves, but also made sure that they become integral part of the society. For example, if a Muslim has let's say has a slave, then what he needed to do, he needed to make sure that he eats the same as well as his slave. Whatever he wears, his slave has to wear the same. Whatever amenities he's using, his slave has to have the same amenities. So that's how, I mean, if he's on the same level, equality, then he's not your slave anymore. Then the Holy Prophet of Islam gave these people who were emancipated, who were freed, important positions. Example of a companion of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God be upon him, is given, Bilal, who was an African slave, and then he was emancipated, he was freed. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God, gave him a task of calling people to prayer. And this is a very a very elevated rank or office for a Muslim to have. So he was given this task. Everyone used to respect him for that. And then whenever he would come, he would address him as Sayyidina Bilal, our leader Bilal. And at the time of the victory of Mecca, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God be upon him, gave Bilal the flag. He was the flag bearer, which is the greatest honor in a military. He was given the flag of he was a flag bearer, and he said those who come under the flag of Bilal, they will all be forgiven. So this is, so one thing is to say it, the other thing is to practice it. The thing with Islam is, and that Islam has not only emancipated and forbidden slavery after that, but also made sure that these people who were free, they became integral part of society. They are giving back to society. So this is how you overcome inequality in a society.
Okay. I have a couple of really interesting questions that came in, but I want to ask a question of my own as it popped in my mind. So in America, you have inequality primarily against African American community. In Canada, we could say that there's a lot of inequality for the Indigenous Native American communities. So what, from an Islamic perspective, should the Native American people do or expect, and what should the government do in this regard to reconcile or rectify these injustices that have taken place? I know the government has done some things here, but what more from an Islamic perspective should or could they do?
I think equal treatment, right? That's the first thing that comes to mind. When we have we don't have equality, then we run into problems. Then we have groups that do not appreciate what has happened in the past, because atrocious crimes have been committed against them as well. And now, for years upon years, government used to deny it. Now they're recognizing it, and also they are apologizing, and they, trying to mend ways. So so the communities, our indigenous communities, need to be assured that the same thing will not be repeated, and they're given proper rights and whatnot. I know Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi Rahimullah once, when he was visiting Canada, some indigenous chief came, and Hazur, they talked about the problems that they were facing and whatnot. So Hazur guided them to to come into politics, to use their voice, to use their vote to bring about the change. That's how it's going to happen. So indigenous communities also need to make sure that the youth ends up on the right track. So I mean, there are a lot of things, and also the government also doing things in terms of reconciliation. But a lot can be done and should be done when it comes to our indigenous communities and making sure that their rights are properly given to them.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I have a few more questions here. How can we be expected to vote when it seems the whole system is corrupt? I think what they're saying is, how can we be expected to make a change by voting when the system is corrupt? Every politician lies and fails in their promise. What should we do then?
This is something we as there are different groups. We need to make sure that we work with communities who have the similar goals and have our voice heard, and pressure the lawmakers and the government to bring the change. I don't know the question which country it refers to, but I'm sure if through working together, bringing people from different communities together who have the similar goals, who are a marginalized community, and working together, united at the same front, can bring about change. And also, education is the key. We need to make sure that we not only are educated, but those people who want change, then they can also come into politics and play their part as a politician. So I mean, no one's stopping them to become a politician. We have seen this happen throughout the history, so that can happen. The options are very open.
Those are very good practical solutions and suggestions. Is there anything from a spiritual perspective, in the sense that prayer can change any of these things?
Yes, of course I alluded to it in response to one of the questions. At the end of the day, we are not supposed to take law in our hands. We can try our level best, and make sure we continue to be a law-abiding citizen. Which, of course, in terms of religion, that's what the teaching of Islam says, and also at the same time pray to God for justice to be served. So that's something really, really important that a religious person would always turn to, that is God and prayers, and making sure that we don't take law into our hands, and we remain a law-abiding citizen, at the same time having our voices heard all across the board.
Okay. At the moment, I just have a few more questions here. One of them is Islam in favor of a communist government or democratic government?
Well, Islam says that everyone has to be given, first of all, equal rights. That's one thing. And Islam also says that justice should be served. And the other thing is, Islam supports the welfare state. The first, in fact, welfare state was the Muslim empire in the caliphate of Hazrat Umar radiallahu anhu. Islam believes that everyone should have healthcare, and that was also done in the Islamic era as well. And of course, Islam does not say that one should actually hoard money and what Islam says, the money of the wealthy person should be levied, should be taxed, and should be spent on poor. Islam does not support either one of them as per se, but Islam has its own um, understanding of governance and how to run a government, and that's of course can be seen throughout the ages, the golden era of Islam. If you this, I mean, we don't have much time to talk about it in detail, but if you can go back and study the golden era of Islam, how Muslims used to govern, and that will give you a clear picture.
Thank you. That actually leads very nicely into the next question. And it says, if Islam presents a solution to racism and inequality, then why do we see so much of it in Muslim countries?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great question, and it is actually sad what's happening in the Muslim world. Whatever Muslims are doing actually have nothing to do with the teaching of Islam. If a Christian not following the teaching of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, that doesn't make him a practicing Christian. And the fault is not on the teachings of Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, or Christianity. Same goes with Islam. Islam has given clear guidelines on what to do, what not to do. For example, talking about religious freedom, Islam gives religious freedom. Islam is the biggest supporter and advocate of the religious freedom. In fact, given and looking at from the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God be upon him, when he migrated to Medina, he wrote, wrote a charter called Charter of Medina, which predates the Magna Carta by 6 centuries. And in this freedom of expression, freedom of religion was granted. In fact, there is a covenant to this day was saved, which is known as the covenant given to the monastery of Saint Catherine of at Mount Sinai by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God be upon him, and Christians, in which they are given freedom of religion and freedom of expression. So all of this is given, but unfortunately Muslims are not following the teachings of Islam, and that's why we believe the Ahmadiyya Muslim community there was a need for a latter-day reformer, a Messiah to come to bring Muslims back to the original teachings of Islam, and that we believe has come in the person of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, the promised Messiah, and Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. So, and he has taught us about justice and equality, fulfilling the rights of God and rights of fellow human being. So all of these things, the Ahmadiyya Muslim community believe that the founder of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community came to bring us back to the teachings of Islam, and we are continuing his work under the guidance and leadership of the Caliph of Islam.
Thank you. A question just came in, which I think is probably on the minds of many people. Do you feel Canada will become more just if the government implements Sharia law?
The Sharia law. So when it comes to Sharia law, in Islam, like I said earlier, we believe in the separation of mosque and state. It is up to the government to make the law and for lawmakers to make the law. We don't promote this. Yes, there are Islamic principles of justice that we say that these are universal teachings, and these universal values of Islam must be adopted if this can help bring the peace. So, for example, the teachings of Islam with regards to justice, as I mentioned, is that you must do do justice even you are to testify against your enemies. It should not stop you to and give testimony against yourselves or against your parents. I mean, these are not just theoretically speaking theories, but it is throughout the ages people have practices. We have given the example of Hazrat Ali radiallahu anhu, the fourth caliph. I want to give another example. the founder of Islam, may the peace and blessing of God be upon him, there was once in his lifetime, there was someone who actually from a very came from a very good family background, a noble family. He committed a crime, and they didn't want him to be punished for his crime. So influential people came to the Prophet and said, if he has brought us shame, but it's best that you keep it hidden and not have him punished. So the Prophet of Islam, peace and blessing of God be upon him, said that if my daughter had committed the crime, she would have also been punished. And he said, justice must be served. If there is no justice, then it can lead to many problems in society. So justice is important. And he said people before you have been destroyed because of this, because they were when they had two tiers of law. When a wealthy person, influential person committed a crime, they would let him go, and a marginalized group or a poor person committed a crime, they would not punish him. They would punish him. So this is what leads to problems. So if uh, peace can be established in the world by following the universal teachings of Islam, by all means. That's why we're doing this program. If you have any better teaching, by all means, tell us. So this is what it is.
Thank you. Your responses are segueing into the next questions very nicely. So in regards to punishment, we see in the Bible and the Quran, previous nations were punished for their injustice or immorality. The questioner is asking, why doesn't God punish these corrupt nations with a flood or rain, fire from the sky as examples, like he punished nations before this?
Yes.
But nations now are much worse and no punishment has come.
Well, if you one can take a look at it, what's happening all around the world. There are different ways, people are being punished one way or another, if you want to call it a punishment. Look what's happening nowadays. Look what's happening. There are different ways to punish people. We're going through an pandemic now. In some parts of the world there are droughts. In some parts of the world there are hurricanes, and there are hails. I mean, you name it. There are different things happening all around the world. We just need to have an eye to see, and these sometimes these things, they're there to warn us for a bigger punishment. So if you look around in the world, things are actually happening, and we need to turn to God. That's why the worldwide head of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community is speaking at different international forums, and reminding especially those in authority to fulfill their duties with justice. And if they don't do justice, it can lead to problems, and some problems will be catastrophic. And he has spoken at length about this. So things are really happening. You really have to have eyes to see. Another thing is, there are different ways God punish. Sometimes God's punish people by appointing their leaders who are corrupt, who are incapable. Look around in the world, you will be able to point out many people who are not worthy of the office that they're serving in. And so sometimes corrupt people, sometimes incapable people are put in position of authority, and they do atrocious crimes, and things that lead people to misery and more problems.
Thank you. I just one or two more questions here. I know we're getting close to the time. So the next question is, what advice, this is not directly related to, I guess, social injustice, but the person is asking, they work in a sales job and sometimes have to hide the truth for the benefit of making the sale. and they work on commission, what advice would you give them, or what should they do in those cases?
I'd say they have to be honest. They have to be honest. The teaching of Islam is such that the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God be upon him, said that you should like for others whatever you like for yourselves. That if you don't like to be cheated, then you should not be cheating others. Deep down, you know that you are doing things that will be detrimental to this man, financially speaking, or whatever sense of the term. So one should be honest about his or her dealing. In the life of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God be upon him, once he was going through a market, and he saw someone selling something, and there were things which were rotten, which were not good. So he put a layer on it with things that were really nice looking. So that's how he was trying to cheat people. The Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing of God be upon him, did not like this and advised him not to do this. We need to be just in our dealings as well, and that's justice demand that we always be transparent and speaking the truth. At the end of the day, when we do this, we are actually thinking that we will get money, or we will earn money by cheating people. And in other words, it's the cheating that is helping us make money. It's not God. So if one is honest in his dealings and is truthful, God always rewards such people. And this is something you should look at, that God is always watching, and one way or another I will be paid. I will have to pay for this, what I'm doing.
Okay, I had one more question, but a very interesting one came in, so I'm gonna read that one first before going to the final question. So it says that the missionary mentioned the phrase "all innocent lives matter" in his talk. While I can agree with the sentiment, I think it undermines a specific minority group that's being targeted by law enforcement. It's a bit of a long question. In order for all innocent lives to matter, we have to focus on Black lives because they are currently being unfairly targeted. For example, when we talk about Ahmadi persecution, we don't say all innocent lives matter because it's specifically Ahmadi lives that are being targeted. We need to focus on specific groups in order to end racism persecution that they are facing. Saving all lives matter unfairly Saying all lives matter unfairly ignores the unique circumstances of many minority groups which need to be addressed to create real equality. What would you say to that?
I think it's I did mention that it's not that we don't support this, but it is our Islam is a universal religion. Islam is a universal religion, and it teaches universality and brotherhood. And mind you, there are many Ahmadi Muslims who are African American, and we have a lot of huge community in Africa as well. So what we are saying is that it's important at such a time of when our society is fragmented. It is our society is divided more than ever before, especially in the US. We need to be united against hate. We need to be united against bigotry. We need to be united against marginal people who are committing atrocious crimes, atrocities against marginalized group. I mean, today yesterday it was George Floyd, and tomorrow it could be somebody else from a Hispanic community or a Muslim or a native. So then we will start Muslim lives matter, or indigenous lives matters, or Hispanic lives matter. Let's bring unity. We need to be united on this front. Hate and bigotry and animosity. Yes, it's the same hate that we are fighting. It's the same bigotry that we are fighting. Africans or the blacks are fighting. The Muslims are fighting. The Jews are fighting the hate. So we need to, as humanity, we need to be united. We need to be looking at ways how we can unite people. So I think Innocent Lives Matter would be the ideal thing, so that we all can follow under one banner and fight for our rights.
Thank you. I'll finish with this last question. There are many more questions that are coming in. A lot of them are kind of repeat of some of the questions that came earlier. So I'll just finish with this. What hope is there? I mean, when you look around the world, north, south, east, west, there's injustice everywhere. Muslim, Christian, doesn't matter. What hope is there for mankind?
Certainly there's hope. There's a verse of the Holy Quran that says, "La taqnatu min rahmatillah," that do not be despair from the mercy of God. And there is another verse that فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا إِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا, that there is always hope after every hardship, and there is always ease after hardship. Yes, we are going through times of difficulty, and we are going through hate, and but we know the tide will turn, and that's why I say the Ahmadiyya Muslim community says we need to be united against hate. We need to be united against bigotry. We need to be united against this front, on this front, so that we can fight for each other's rights. And that's why we promote love for all, hatred for none, because it is hate that leads people to inequality, and that leads people to commit injustice and commit atrocious crimes against humanity. So yes, there is hope, and we as humanity cannot give up. We need to work together to dispel this attack of hate and bigotry.
Thank you, Missionary Imtiaz. I want to thank you again for your time and your response and talk on today's topic. That concludes the question and answer period of this program. Before I hand it over for concluding remarks, I just want to again thank everybody for logging in, and apologize in the beginning. There was a bit of an audio problem. Hopefully you guys were able to catch all of the program. Now I'd like to pass it over to Mirza Nasir Ahmed, who is the president of the Brampton East chapter, to conclude this program with a few remarks and silent prayers.
Assalamu alaikum, peace be upon everyone. Jazakallah, our host Nuruddin Sahib, for supporting such a good discussion. As you have just mentioned, that there are more questions that have been sent by our audience, which is a very good start, mashallah. Tonight's program is just one of the humble steps in this direction to educate community at large with regard to the topic. As we believe that all the true faith and religions are from God, and obviously is one God as far as we are the believers. And if they're all from the same God, then obviously the teaching that they teach are also same and of the justice. Because without justice, we cannot achieve peace in our daily life. And if one individual cannot achieve peace in their daily life, then how can a nation or a country can achieve peace? So with this, Islam does not only stops at act of justice, but it goes a step further, and it says act of kindness should follow the justice. And that is what the teaching of Islam is, as act of kindness is an act of charity. So with this, as we'll be holding further talks of the same nature, maybe on a different topic, I'd like to request all the audience who have joined this evening with us. First of all, I want to thank every one of them. But I'll remind them that if they can subscribe to the YouTube channel, so for the future talk, when we have any program, you will receive a notification. You can also follow us on Twitter, and as well as you can go online, alislam.org, to research about our community and our beliefs. At the end, I'd like to thank our very learned speaker, Missionary Imtiaz Sara Sahib, for his time and wonderful speech on this topic, as well as our behind-the-scene volunteers who have been working to make this program successful. Thank you all. As our tradition, we conclude all the programs with the silent prayer. I request our Missionary Sahib, Imtiaz Sara Sahib, to lead us in the silent prayer to conclude the program. Thank you.
Please join me in silent prayer. Ameen. Allahumma ameen.